It feels like every game that I tried to review is like a thriller. Like we saw bangers against Galatasaray and Brentford a few weeks ago, and oh, wow, what another like crazy game! Like this game was so dramatic. Like if you think about just on paper, Anana with a last minute penalty save, Harry Maguire with a goal. Like this is just crazy. I literally got up out my chair and screamed when Harry Maguire scored. I don't even know if anyone heard me like nearby, but that game was just crazy. And there are again some negatives that we have to go through, particularly in the first half. But as a game as a whole, as a passionate game, that second half was incredible. What just was so interesting, and gotta take a bit of a breather just to calm down. But let's get straight into it. I'm gonna go through the first half. Uh, it wasn't a very good performance. I think we still really struggle with breaking down a low block. As you can see, we were set up in a similar way here. Man, a lot of times we saw Maguire or Amrabat Varane on the ball, and the ball would constantly just be shifting from Maguire to Amrabat to Varane. We always kept trying to find Diogo Dalot on this right hand side because he was the only option available. You know, I think the biggest problem, if you look at this structure, which is a structure that was roughly occurring like so many times throughout that first half, was you see a very, very flat front five. A front five that is not only just very flat, but look how there's how many six players in between our the in the center of the park between our players on the ball, our defenders and Amrabat, and then the front five. That is was a huge issue, and it seemed tactical. And I don't have. I mean, it does seem like, as I said, it seems tactical. I don't think that it was just a thing that the players did. I think we need to address that, and we didn't really. And sometimes we would see Bruno, maybe occasionally Bruno will come in or Hoyland would drop in. But the problem with this is you'd see actually what happens is that they wouldn't just drop in. They would sort of take up a position here, and normally, as what would happen is they'd get followed. You know, and you see that with Amrabat, he'd get marked as well whether wherever he was on the pitch, he'd often be followed, and Bruno would often be marked, and they're not really useful as an option. We're not very very good at getting into good positions and linking up the play when we're against a deep block. What we should have done, and what we actually did once, I think in the game I saw with Hoyland that I saw okay that was quite nice, was in this kind of position. Let's say it's not the end of the world if it's this kind of position. It's actually can be ideal. And in this case, Hoyland was in front of his man. Maybe this midfielder was just out the way, marking Bruno or something. And what Hoyland did was, when Varane was on the ball, I think he hung in this area for a while, and he waited until Varane was ready to release the pass. He waited. He didn't move and I think what the problem was is number one, big issue was none of our players were making that drop in movement. No one in our team was actually making that drop in movement. And when they did, they made it way too early, which meant that there was so much time for the Copenhagen players to just track them and follow the run. But in this case, what Hoyland did very well, and what we should have seen a lot more in the game, was a very quick movement into space. Quick movement. It was easy for Varane to quickly play that pass into Hoyland, and he would just very quickly make that drop in movement, receive the ball, and then knock it on to the wide area. We saw that once in the game, I believe. We should have been doing that consistently because there was Copenhagen was set up specifically with the false nine and the two wingers playing very narrow to block off that midfield. So every time he got the ball, we kept trying to play it wide, recycling it from the centre back to Amrabat to the centre back to Dalot always going always to Dalot. Then maybe Dalot would try something on the right hand side, but there was no other option through the middle of the park. And I think number one, Copenhagen did very well to block that off with that middle block of six in front of the back four. But also it was poor from our players who didn't really make that quick drop movement and move the ball quickly and then run back into space to push us out the pitch. Now you don't always need to make that drop in movement. It's not always a necessary thing. What we could have also done We didn't again. I didn't really see enough of it. Was just simply playing a pass quickly to a player who is free in that area, and then they can maybe shift that on somewhere there. And even this in this kind of scenario, this sort of movement is a lot better than playing this pass straight out wide because it disorientates that midfield. They don't expect that pass, so then suddenly there'll be like two, three players trying to press McTominay. If you can then quickly move that ball onwards, the player who moves it onto will be in so much more space. And here in this case, Dalla would be able to really go, uh, would have been able to go toe to toe with his defender, go 1v1, try beat him or play a pass to Anthony somehow. We didn't see enough of that. We saw maybe a couple of these line breaking passes, but just not enough. I think in the first half, the midfield dynamic was not good. I think McTominay wasn't getting on the ball enough. Bruno wasn't getting on the ball enough. And we saw a massive improvement in the second half. I think McTominay being very high at the pitch for a lot of the time made it difficult for us to find a player to drop in. And he was because I said that flat front five with Rashford to Anthony. You can see that front five there. If I think McTominay was probably the furthest forward for the most of the game out of those five, I think that if he was probably able to drop in a bit better, we didn't need to get so many passes going wide. We kept trying to go mainly towards Dallo, sometimes towards Reguilon, but it just kept going round and round and round, which the fans in the ground you could hear they were getting annoyed by that. And in this scenario here, if we could have played a line breaking pass to someone who could drop in, if we could have done that, we could have got a lot more transitions in the first half. And I know Eric Ten Hag is a big fan of these sort of transition football plays. So if we just managed to get that pass through, we could have had a lot more chances created in the first half. And what we saw with the introduction of Christian Eriksen was Bruno playing in a more natural number 10 role, McTominay coming in a bit deeper. And again, McTominay didn't really get involved on the ball pretty much for the whole game. I think that's something that either is tactical or is just his personality profile. I've never really seen him get on the ball in a game and really dictate the game. And I think that he does have the sort of ability to do that, but he just doesn't do it. He's like the player who has the right body type and the technical ability to maybe, dictate the game, but maybe something wrong with his mentality, maybe something wrong with his confidence. So I think at this age he should be starting to get to the point where he's able to develop this sort of skill, because when he gets older, he'll no longer be able to rely on his physicality and energy to use as his as one of his strong points. He needs to have that sort of ability to get a hold of the game, calm the game down, dictate the game. If he can learn that, he will become a very very good player in even towards the end of his career. On to Christian Eriksen, I think he really came in and unlocked that game. I think it wasn't just the fact that he was a very good player. I think obviously Copenhagen made it very easy for us because they clearly didn't want to settle for a draw. They clearly didn't want to settle for a loss, of any kind. They really started to open up, and the midfield got more open, and it was just a wrong timing for them to do this. I think they should have really been a bit more stubborn and tried to go for a draw. Maybe instead of trying to qualify for the group stage, for the knockout stages, they could have tried maybe hoping for third place and getting into the Europa League. But we really started seeing way more gaps and a lot more risky plays from Copenhagen, and a lot more of a higher line um, in their team. And it made it easy for some of our players. Eriksen getting on the ball, uh, Rashford being able to run into space, and we saw a few chances with Rashford. There was one where he took a big touch, another few where he made quite a few good runs in. We were able to find him, particularly being able to make those runs between the right back and the centre back, such as here, making a run into that space, and probably Eriksen on the ball, playing that into his path, and he'd run onto that and get a few chances. And we saw that quite a few, maybe in the first 15 minutes of the first half, 10-15 minutes. Very, very end to end. Copenhagen had a lot of chances as well. The whole game just suddenly opened up in the second half. I think Copenhagen really wanted to go for the win, and it cost them. I think whatever they did at halftime was wrong. They should have kept their block, their defensive shape, instead of trying to go for the win. There's nothing really much else to say in terms of tactically. Um, we were able to really exploit the gaps that Copenhagen lost the ball a few times, poor passes, poor clearances. Anthony doing very well, being able to capitalize, um, and winning the ball high up the pitch. He did that very very often this game, and I know that's one of the characteristics that Erik Ten Hag likes in Anthony. Before we signed him, he was one of the highest tacklers in the final third, highest ball recoveries in the final third in the whole of Europe. And we saw that today. Won the ball high up the pitch many times, getting the ball into players in the midfield who are then able to exploit Rashford or Højlund in good spaces. I'm going to go jump straight into the player ratings and we can start to individualize the performances. I think Onana has to be an 8 for me. Penalty save will give him an extra point. And before that, he was having a 7 game anyway. Uh, he made a very good save right after the first half. Sorry, right after the second half started. I don't know if he made a meal of it, but it looked very, very good anyways. It looked like a world-class save. And the penalty, it wasn't, it wasn't a very good penalty, but we have to give it to him. Like, that is, I think, to save a penalty is just really, really hard as a goalkeeper. Everyone knows that. And it saved us 2 points. He saved us 2 points. Does this mistake account for all the mistakes he's made in the past? Obviously not. Is it a step in the right direction? Definitely so. We need to see more performances like that. The one thing I will say is, again, distribution. I cannot see an improvement. The shot stopping is there today. Obviously not at De Gea's level, but it's there. Much better than the last games, and it is at a it is at a high level now. It's at the level that I expected Onana would be at when we signed him, which is why of all the goalkeepers to replace him, I would have wanted him. And the penalty save saves us the game. So fantastic. Hopefully he can really, really get confidence from that game and really, really start to progress now. I think now's the time that he has to just step it up. And if he can maintain the level he played at today, plus getting the passing ability and whatnot, I think he can do very, very well in the Man United shirt. Dallo, I'm going to give a 7. I don't know if people are going to rate his performance or not, but he was electric in the first half. Probably one of our best players in the first half. I'm telling you, he is so underrated. So underrated. Like, this guy can do so much in the final third. It's actually incredible. Varane, I'll give him a 6.5. No, you know what? I'll give Varane a 7. I think there was a clearance towards the very end. It was very good. He's just somebody who is um, class, world class. He's a very good player. He doesn't necessarily, when you see world class centre back compilations, you see Van Dijk making like 25 tackles, Ramos in tackles and fights, Keeling. Varane doesn't need to make those tackles. His positioning is so good that he just does the basics perfectly, and we need a player like that. We don't necessarily need someone in flying in with 25 slide tackles every single game. We need someone who's just going to be basic. He was very good on the ball today. Probably had like the most touches and most passes in the game. All the players were looking towards him to make passes, and he was trying the passes into Højlund in the first half and getting it wide, playing switches of play on the ball. And defensively, he was solid. There was one slight hiccup when the ball went over his head, but he can't grow like 10 inches, can he? So that's not his fault. Um, Overall, a very, very sound game and made a very good, important interception in the last 10 minutes or something. Maguire, you've got to give him an 8. I think for what he's been through, to get that goal in the end was magnificent. Should he start in the fight on Sunday against Man City? I think he will. I don't think he should. I'm worried about the Sunday game, I'm not going to lie. But today, defended very well, very big clearances, very good blocks. In the first few minutes, some dodgy things he did, but the goal, I was ecstatic when that went in. For Maguire as well, yeah, it's you love to see it. You love to see it, and he needed that. He really did. Region, I'm gonna give a 6. What you're always gonna get from Region is a passionate performance. He's on loan here, and he's playing with so much passion and so much energy, and we like to see that. I think a couple passes, he could have set Rashford through on one of them, and he made another pass. I think he could have done better on. Um, yeah, just a steady 6 performance. Nothing too dramatic, nothing great, nothing too bad. But again, he's just coming back from illness and injury, so we have to bear that in mind. I'm going to give Amrabat a 6. In the first half, he was making a lot of good tackles, good interceptions, trying to get on the ball, trying to play through, dropping in, shifting through the midfield, sometimes playing within the three centre backs, sometimes holding his position in the middle of the park. He did that quite well. I was a bit surprised to see him get taken off. Would have probably taken off McTominay at half time, but it worked because the second half was a lot better. I probably would have kept him on though. I think that the defensive side he did do well in. He's still adapting to this team, and again we have to give him time. But I'll just give him a 6. It was a steady performance, really. McTominay, I have to give him a 5. If that penalty went in, it'll probably be a 4. But I was going to give him a 5.5 beforehand because I was going to say he never really showed up for the ball. He never really got on the ball, and I said that as an element of his game which he needs to improve in. But we did win the game, and we did play very well in the second half, and he was on the team. He needs to show up more, and again, just that tackle at the end was a bit reckless. When I did first see it, I thought it was a penalty. For some reason, they didn't show another replay. They only showed like a small glimpse of one replay, and I was like, I couldn't really judge if it was a penalty or not. But luckily, Ananda pulled a miracle and saved his ass. Fernandez didn't really do too much. I think I'm gonna give him a 5.5. I expect more. I don't know the last time he got a goal. I think it was probably Nottingham Forest. He needs to improve. I think against Man City, I think that we have to play the same midfield we started with today. I think we have to play the same 11 we started with today, maybe taking off Maguire, if anyone, because Man City are a very different team. But in a game like this and a game against Man City, I'm just thinking, is Bruno really going to do anything? Today, he wasn't as bad as he was against Sheffield United. Against Sheffield United, he was messing up a lot of passes, but today he didn't get on the ball too much, never really created anything huge. He just did okay, but for Fernandez's old level, it's not an average performance. An average performance from Fernandez would still be a couple of good chances created. I think he still needs to do more. I think he is better than the last game, but he has fallen off quite significantly. I believe. Actually, I'm going to give him a 6.5 because I think a lot of people are going to go in on him. He, for me, was probably our most exciting attacker. I like the fact that he's direct. He gets that ball. He's in the challenge. He's winning the ball a lot, and he's running. He's turning that outside turning. He's running down the line. He made a. It was a good. It was a foul from Amrabat, but they didn't give it. They played a good pass into Anthony. Lovely touch. Played into Hoyland, who did a lovely back heel, and McTominay couldn't get there. But moments like that where he just on the ball and he's so direct and so skillful, he looks like a threat again. He looks like the Anthony that he was that the level he was playing at when we just signed him. He looks that confident again, and I need to see more of that. I want to see him play like that again. And if he can do that against Man City, he'll most likely be the most threatening player on the pitch. And I think Rashford could learn a bit more from him, and I think Rashford could be a bit braver on the ball, bit more direct. I think when you see Rashford playing, he's a bit more hesitant, whereas Anthony's just always trying to run, run, run. I'd probably give Rashford a 6 today. Um, should have got taken off instead of Anthony. I think you're going to play Rashford on the right hand side. He didn't do badly, but he didn't do as well as Anthony. I don't think he did as well as Anthony when he played on the left either. Um, Something's wrong with Rashford. He wasn't happy to come off. So I think I don't, if Eric Ten Hag changed his mind because he saw Rashford unhappy, that's a bad sign. I think Rashford has to fix whatever's going on with him, and I think he needs to start getting on the score sheet again. I think what Rashford needs is a goal. I think what Bruno needs is a goal, and then they can start building off from that performance. Um, they are key players at this moment in time. I would play them both against Man City because I think we need that kind of player. I do worry about Rashford's work rate defensively, and with Reggie on in the team, who is not the best defensively, with Bruno playing on the left hand side of the midfield, with Rashford playing on the left hand side, they are all susceptible defensively. And even if we don't play Region and play Lindelof, we're playing a player who's playing our position. So that's a big worry for me. Um, he just need when I see Anthony play, he's always hugging this sort of that area on the pitch defensively. Um, Russia's very very delayed, and I sometimes worry that the opposition are overloading on the left hand side and doing a 2v1 on the fullback. He has to improve his defensive side. He has to sprint faster and get there a bit earlier, you know, like Anthony does. And I think he needs to be more confident going forward. We took a shot early on in the game, which I know it was a ridiculous shot, but I want to see him do that. I want to see him cut inside and get a couple more shots off because I think in the last few games he's being a bit too scared, a bit too unselfish to do that. I think today was probably the right level of selfishness, but he didn't really get on the ball and try a lot. He made a good pass to Hoyland, which could have gone in if it was just a Hoyland just patting up a little bit. But yeah, I think he can improve. We've seen this before with Rashford. Um, as long as he has confidence in his ability and has the right mindset, he can he can easily get out of this rut. Hoyland for me, I'll give him 6.5. I think a lot of people are now probably going to start talking about Hoyland, and here's why I absolutely hate statistics. Even as someone who's doing physics myself at uni, you can't use maths to analyze a football game. People trying to watch this game will think, oh well, Hoyland does the goals per game rate. Like shut up. Like who cares? You watch that game and you see an actual proper striker playing at Man United, someone who's running the lines, who is bullying defenders, who's fast, who's physical, and he has improved his team massively. The way we play with him in the team versus the way we play with, let's say, Rashford up top is a lot different. Even with Martial, I'll come on to Martial later when we go into the player ratings and how I would navigate the striker situation. I can clearly see a massive improvement with Hoyland in the team, and I like his physicality, his pace, and his directness. He is a natural number 9, and we need that. We haven't had that in a while. Ericsson, I have to give him an 8. His substitution was the one that really changed the game. I don't know if it was just him, or if it was the way that we changed at half time, or if the way that even Copenhagen changed at half time. He did play a role in that, and I think he got the perfect pass to Maguire for the goal. Pinpoint cross, absolute on the dot that cross. I think I wrote down Ericsson has schooled Fernandez. He is schooling Fernandez. I don't understand how in these kind of games we are benching Ericsson to play Fernandez, and I don't think Ericsson should play against Man City. I think Man City is a whole different ball game. Playing against them is just more about defensive, being able to have legs in the team and match their intensity and then hit on the counter. But in a game like this, if we had Ericsson from the start, it could have been we could have posed a much bigger threat. I like the way he played when he came on. Some of his passing was saucy, it was clean. Some of the pings, everything was nice. The way he played through the defense and really was able to play passes on the runners and across from Maguire. He got an assist as well. I think he has to be an 8. Um, Garnacho probably a 6. Uh, un- unlucky today, a bit unlucky with a couple of shots. But Garnacho's Garnacho. What I will say is that I never seen a miss like that from him. You know, nothing too deep. Obviously, people do that, but the one thing that is so amazing about Garnacho is he doesn't make mistakes like the miss he made today. That was just a one-off, but he's usually so composed and so calm in these situations, and obviously that's not gonna. He's not gonna let that get to him. There was another good save from the keeper when McTominay passed him. McTominay should have passed to Rashford in that case. Passed to the wrong player because Garnacho was on his this hand side. If you're trying to bend that in, it's more difficult when the ball's coming that way and the keeper has a bit more time to set himself and look big. Whereas with Rashford, it's coming onto him. He can just hit that, take a touch that way and hit it because he will have a bit more variety with the way he can shoot that ball. He can either hit it first time, or he can cop it in, touch it inside and hit on the left, or touch it outside and hit on the right. Whereas Garnacho is always going to do that same thing of cutting it onto the right and hitting it across because he's right-footed. McTominay should have passed to Rashford in that case, and it was a wrong choice. We could have seen off the game and not have to worry too much about the penalty at the end. Uh, Lindelof 6.5 made a big defensive action when the player ran in behind and came across. Solid player. Um, I don't know what's going to happen on Sunday. If he's going to play left back, if he's going to play centre back, if Johnny Evans will play, if Maguire will play, Reguilon will play. Who knows? But he's been a stalwart for us over the last how many months because Varane and Martinez have all alternatively been injured quite often. What I will say is that people often criticise Varane about his injury record. When was the last time Martinez played for us? You know, Lindelof has been coming in and doing very well in their absence, so you've got to give him credit for that. Yeah, I said the Martial substitution I didn't really understand. I'll give him a 6. He didn't do badly, but I feel like in this kind of game, what I will say is that when they were losing 1-0, we had Hoyland on the pitch, and we were using Hoyland's physicality by playing long balls to him and being direct and hitting counters with Rashford, Garnacho, and Hoyland. Martial, bringing Martial on, you should do when you're drawing or losing and playing against a low block. Martial is perfect at breaking down low blocks because he drops in and links up. And when you're playing against a low block and you're losing, you should actually play both Hoyland and Martial because then you can have a target man, a focal point in Hoyland, and someone who's going to drop deep, link up, and be very good in the positional play. In a game like that, when we're winning against a team who are trying to score a goal, when we're hitting on the counter, we didn't need to bring on Martial. I probably would have brought on Mason Mount for Rashford to help on the right hand side for defensively. He probably was going to do that at first if he didn't see. I don't know if it was a mistake and he was supposed to take off Hoyland, or if he saw Rashford annoyed and wanted to take off Hoyland instead because he saw Rashford annoyed. If it was the second case, then that's a big problem of player power in the team. I'm not going to go too deep into that because I think a lot of other people will, and I think that's not the right thing to do. However, I will say that I want to see Martial getting more game time, and I want to see Martial playing with Hoyland in a few games. Other than that, what performance? No, sorry, not what performance, what a game. emotionally. Derby is I don't understand why the derbies are 3:30 on a Sunday. I've never seen a 3:30 kickoff on a Sunday, but I am not very confident going to the game tactically, but mentality wise, we look good. We look like we have passion and energy in the team. Hopefully, we can get 3 points against Man City.